Hey everybody, John Walworth here for Travel Worth Taking. I like to travel, but I like to travel on a budget. There's a big world out there and it doesn't have to break the bank to see it. Some of the most amazing places I've been have also been the cheapest to visit. So with that, this week we're spending a day in Cozumel, Mexico. I'll show you what we did there, and towards the end of the video I'll break down how much it cost and finally determine whether, in my opinion, it was worth the visit. Cozumel is one of the Caribbean ports frequently visited by cruise lines. It's much smaller than some of the other vacation spots in Mexico, but it has a deep water port, and that's why cruise ships frequently stop there. I've been there a few times now. I hear people complain about Cozumel, but I think that's because they don't know what there is to do there. Now, every time I've been to Cozumel, I arrive by cruise ship. This video is not about the cruise itself, which this time was aboard the MSC Seashore. Now, most people get off the ship and immediately head to Mr. Sancho's beach club or some other resort within view of the ship. To me, this is a mistake. If you like beach resorts, that's fine, but for me, I like to explore the character of a place, and Cozumel is full of character. In the past, I've hired a guide to take us around the island, but this time my wife Lynn and I decided to do things a little bit differently. We rented a car and explored the island on our own. This is fine because the island is small and it's virtually impossible to get lost, and we were able to see things on our own time. However, we ran into a bit of a problem in that we rented the car to pick up at 8:30 in the morning and didn't find out until we got there that the car rental place doesn't actually open until 10. Other than that, the car rental was a good way to see the island. Whereas the two cruise ports and the resorts are all on the western side of the island, our first plan is normally to head to the wild and virtually uninhabited east side of the island. This is where you'll find empty beaches and the occasional beach hut or restaurant, but other than that, it's just you and the ocean. The island of Cozumel is only about 15 kilometers wide, so it doesn't take very long to get to the east side, at least if the car rental place is open anyway. Otherwise, you can take a taxi. However, I found that taxis on Cozumel are rather expensive, relatively speaking. The car rental was a far better deal. There's a highway that follows the beach along the entire eastern side of the island, and there are a lot of places to stop if you just want to have a beach that you like. Lynn and I stopped in a couple places, and I just headed out into the water with my underwater camera and explored a bit. What do you think, hon? Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm glad we rented a car, even though it was a pain to get going. The east side is also where you'll find El Mirador, which is a couple of land bridges over the crashing waves of the Caribbean Sea. For me, this is a must visit. You can climb on top of it and just enjoy the sound of the ocean and look down through the holes in the rock to the water below. Wear good shoes though, as the limestone is extremely sharp. There's still the typical tourist stuff there as well, like getting your picture taken with an iguana, but it's all totally avoidable if you don't want to do that. The beaches are free as well, so there's no reason to pay for a resort just to go to the beach. This time we drove all the way to the south end of the island, where we found a cute little beach hut serving drinks. The drinks were great, and the view and the ambiance were unmatched. We just sipped our drinks and enjoyed some chips and salsa and listened to the waves crash on the rocky shore. Coming back across the island, we stopped at a little local restaurant where we ordered some tacos and horchata. I'm pretty sure we were the only tourists there, as the cruise ship tourists tend not to come into the main part of town near the Mercado. It's really too bad, because this is where you see the real Cozumel. The Mercado is where all the locals buy their fresh meat, fruit, and vegetables. It's a photographer's dream, but if you decide to go, make sure you go in the morning because everything closes down after lunch. Other possibilities for things to see are cenotes, which are natural sinkholes in the limestone filled with crystal clear water, and you can go swim in some of them as well, or just going on a nature walk. There are a lot of wild natural areas in Cozumel, and you're pretty much just limited by the time you have on the island. Diving is of course an option as well. Cozumel is a world-renowned dive destination. If scuba diving is your thing, this is a great place to come. Alright, so now the part you've been waiting for. How much did we spend, and in my opinion, was it worth it? But before we get to that, if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to be notified when new content comes out. So first up, the costs. For this video, I'm only going to include the costs that we incurred while we were on the island of Cozumel. I'm not going to include the cruise costs. That will be on a separate video. Our first expense was a taxi to the car rental place. This was a $20 taxi ride, which was expensive for how far we went, but when you get off the cruise ship, they really do have you over a barrel. The car rental itself was free since I used credit card points, but if I had to pay for it, it would have been $30. So ironically, the taxi ride was almost as much as the car rental was. Even though my credit card covered the collision insurance, I still had to pay $25 for liability insurance. So all in all, still a pretty good deal for a rental for the day. I spent $9 on fuel to fill up the car before I dropped it off at the end of the day. And finally, for transport, I had a $15 shuttle back to the ship afterwards. On the east side of the island, we spent $24 on drinks that came with chips and salsa. The drinks were expensive as they were just fruit juice. It was fresh. Nevertheless, I think if we had alcohol in them, they would have actually been the same price, but they just don't charge something different for a virgin drink. The drinks and the salsa were both really good, and the ambiance was fantastic. Then we also stopped for lunch at a small local place next to the Mercado, as I said before. We had chicken tacos and horchata. Lunch was $16, so the total we spent on the island for the day was only $94. If we had to pay for the car rental, it would have been another $30, like I said, so it would have been $124. Even with that, that breaks down to $62 per person for the day. Quite an inexpensive day for a day in tropical Mexico. So now, in my opinion, was it worth it to go? Well, absolutely. Cozumel will give you every opportunity to be a typical tourist, but if you want to skip all that and just enjoy a day away from the rest of the tourists, you can do that as well. Cozumel is beautiful, and if you're into diving, it's a great spot for that also. It's a relaxing place to be, and there's enough to see that it would keep you busy for a couple of days should you want to do that. Cozumel also has its own local culture you can see if you know where to look, and we've never felt unsafe being there. So in a nutshell, yes, I'd recommend a day or two in Cozumel. And if you have a cruise ship going there, it's a great spot to be. Once again, please subscribe if you haven't. Comment if you agree or totally disagree with me on any of my assessments. I have a backlog of travel video from around the world. I'm just trying to find the time to process it. So when I do, I'll get additional videos up. So until next time.